Good day to everyone. I hope you are fine and well during this present time. And at this moment, we'll be sharing about empathic listening, which is the application of the basic principles of psychological first aid in the school context. We begin by understanding what does mental health really mean. In fact, all of us can understand it. And we do not need to have a degree of specialization in psychology or any other behavioral sciences in order to do such. What is being required of us, what is needed is the ability to look within us, to introspect, and to be able to look around us and feel what is happening in the lives of the people among us. Because mental health is not just a mere concept that sprung out from the researches of the leading psychologists from the past years and decades. It is not just a mere trending topic that has been circulating online. Most especially, it is not just a program that must be done out of sheer compliance to what is asked by people on authority. Mental health is about what makes you and the people around you live a happy life. In other words, it is a state of life, a condition of holistic wellness. Such the World Health Organization states, and I quote, it is a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his, her, or own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. And in order to dissect this rich definition given by the World Health Organization, allow me to point out three things that we need to look at in order to assess what is the overall state of our mental health. Number one, mental health is a state of the person being able to achieve one's tasks. It is about realizing one's goals and bringing out the best that he or she could offer at that particular moment in that particular activity. Second thing, mental health is about our ability to cope with the challenges present in our own life. We're all aware that living today is really difficult, or it is much appropriate to use the term very challenging because there are a lot of challenges and problems happening around us. And yet, we are required to face them. And what makes a well-lived life, a happy life, is our ability to bounce back from these stresses. That is mental health. And finally, it is also an overall condition of being productive in spite of all the challenges, wherein the person, in spite of all the difficulties pressing, in the midst of the worries, sadness, one is still able to look at the meaning of what he or she does, the meaning behind his or her existence, the meaning behind his or her interaction with the people, the meaning of the work that he or she does, and her contribution for the general welfare of the community. And now, let us try to look at the common challenges that hinders us from developing a good level of mental health, mental well-being. And here are the common sources of stress or the stressors present during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. First among the list is the or are the uncertainties that we're experiencing at present. We're all aware that a lot of changes and shifts happen in our country and in fact the whole world lately for the past year and months. And we have observed the presence of a health scare because of the prevalence of a virus that can easily be contracted and transmitted. And apart from that, this virus is still on the process, in the clinical process of finding cure for this disease. And many people were inflicted by this infection, and some of them even died. Apart from that, we also observe a great economic recession because a lot of industries closed. They ceased from operating. And as a result, many people lost their job. And because of this limitation of workforce, another problem will surface. The limitation of the supply and availability of essential goods and services. Second problem during this time is our lack of routine. Because we are forced to stay at home in order to avoid the easy and widespread transmission of the virus, we had this problem of lack of routine. Because we cannot do the things that we would want to do. We are not able to do the things that we enjoy before this pandemic came because of the strict quarantine measures. Because we need to stay at home, we have this limited capacity and time to do the things that you would want to do. And the number one challenge during this time is boredom. We feel bored with whatever that we're doing. We might do things right now, but not in the same way that we would enjoy them as before. Things seems to be different, really, at this present moment. And when we feel preoccupied by this lack of enjoyment, we would ask ourselves, what is the worth of doing such kind of things at this present time? What might be the reason for me of waking up every morning? What is the sense of continuing the task that I am asked to do every day? If the next day I will just be finding myself within the corners of our house, looking at the walls, thinking, what might happen next? Third problem is the reduced social support. Another problem caused by the limitations of due to the strict quarantine measures is the restrictions on the movement of people. Again, we cannot easily go out of our own homes. Much more, we cannot also travel to go to our distant relatives, to our relatives and friends who are living in another place. That is difficult. That is challenging. And even in the presence of the social media, the quality of interaction seems to be differing. And there are times that when we feel down and frustrated with what is happening around us, we might ask ourselves, is there really someone who is willing to help me at this present time? We might feel shy to contact people because we might cause them reasons, or they might have no available time to attend to our needs. Thus, we may resort to being alone, to feel alone in our own context, in our own places, because we believe and we feel that no one is there to support us. And finally, during this time that we are not able to do things that we would like to enjoy, when most of the time our preoccupation is to think what will happen next, our unsettled issues will resurface. The problems that we thought that were gone because we have forgotten them will come back and return. Yes, especially during this time when most of the time we feel bored and we will just think, what happened today? What happened last week? What happened on the past years of my life? And then the temptation will come. We will ask, what if I have this kind of chance then? What if I did this? What if this problem did not came into my life, problems will just resurface because we have not accepted the fact that these problems are present in us and we fail to address them in the way we are required to face and solve them. Such, if we will be dwelling in these problems for a longer period of time, then it will lead us to distress, impaired thoughts, negative thoughts, and disturbance in our own emotions. We feel sad, demotivated. And if this distress and this emotional disturbance will continue for the next days, weeks, and months, then it will impair our ability to function well in school, in our work, in our interactions with the people around us. It could affect our quality of life. Such, I would like to invite you to ask yourselves, are these stressors present and evident in your experiences lately? In what way do these stressors affect you? Now, the question pops up. What should we do to help people with mental health problems during these crisis situations? Now we are able to look at the stresses that we are experiencing, and we're able to look at the stressors that could affect the people around us. What must be done? What is the very first thing that you could consider doing to respond to this great need during this time in ensuring a mental health friendly environment? During this time, wherein the need for psychosocial support is very great. There comes the recollection or the awareness of the common responses that we do when someone who is troubled will come to seek our help. The first one is the first response that we usually do is to give advices. Actually, giving advice is very good because you share your knowledge, your experiences to people. And there's no bad and there's nothing wrong with it. But sometimes, because we're just focused on speaking what we think of the things happening around us, to the experience of other people, we forget to look at what is the experience of that person really is. We forgot to look at the perspective of the person because it is as if we're just there speaking things that we would like to say, but we are not able to listen to what the people would really want them to speak of or to talk about. At some point, because we are just fixated on saying things that we would like to say, things that we believe, we'll even use words from the Bible or any inspirational books, concepts and theories from psychology, from philosophy, even theology, and other disciplines of life just to back up our claims and beliefs. All of these things are valid. The Bible, theology, philosophy, psychology, these knowledges born out of human inquiry are all valid. But what is invalid here is our insensitivity, our lack of ability to look at the person and to look at what is happening in his or her life. Second thing that we are guilty of is our inability to be sensitive on other people's capacity to decide on their problems. Sometimes when people would come to seek our help, we'll just resort uh, on giving a long list of do's and don'ts. You should do this. You should not do this. It is harmful for you. It will be helpful for you. It is as if we are the judge. We are the only judge that could say what is wrong and what is right. Again, the person, even he or she is distressed and having a hard time settling his or her life issues. Again, he or she has the ability to know what must be done and what are the things that must be understood by him or her. And at the end of the day, that person is able to address the problem. We just need to be there for them, to support them, and not to boss them around as if I am the one who must decide, not you. Because you are not fit, you do not have the ability to settle these things, then I must decide. That is completely wrong. And third, much graver sin than the previous two, being silent, or to be much specific, being indifferent to people. Because when we do not respond to their call, to their plea, they would think that no one cares, no one really cares for them. It was as if they are just ghosts lingering around and no one else observes their presence. They are unseen entities because we fail to look at them, we fail to listen to them, we fail to feel what they are feeling. Why? Because we believe that they are already old, they're already grown up, they're already capable and they do know what to do or what should they do not do. But yes, that is true. But how about our response, our ability to extend our help, to support them when they feel tired and distraught during their quest to find healing during these times of distress, of being psychologically challenged? There is something that is much painful than rejection. To feel that you do not exist in this world, that you are not part of this world, because no one sees you, no one seems to care for you. From that question of what should we do comes another question. Who among us would choose to listen in order to help people who are experiencing mental health problems? Who among us would dare to listen than to talk, and talk and talk? Who would consider looking first at the person rather than seeing what is wrong in his or her life? People with painful experiences, more than anything else, need accompaniment and support. They need us. They need our understanding. They do know what to do and what must be done. They are able and they will be able to do them. They just need support from other people. People who can be humane. People who would choose to understand and embrace them as they are. Unconditional positive regard. Receiving that person as he is, no matter what. During this time, what is expected from us is to become people who would choose to listen rather than to judge. That simple act of taking time to listen to other people's hurtful experiences matters a lot. Psychological first aid is all about listening, listening with the heart, empathic listening. We cannot give an effective intervention unless we first spend time listening to the person's story. Only by then that we could identify their urgent needs and to see the possible ways we could be of help to them. Psychological first aid is practical and easy to administer. It is practical. It can be easily utilized by any person, even in the absence of training in psychosocial support, in psychological treatment. What is being asked of us are three simple things, three simple traits that we must possess in order to become truly persons who are fit to help. Number one is openness. Openness to receive people, to welcome people who are seeking for help, to accept them regardless of who they are. Second is patience. Patience to spend time to listen to them and in giving effort to understand what they are thinking and feeling at that moment. Last is flexibility, the ability to adjust based on the needs of the person we are encountering at that time. Because not all who would seek our help are the same. So we must be sensitive enough to look at those, to recognize those needs, and adjust in what way we could be of help to them. Psychological first aid is easy to be done. It can be done by anyone as long as that person is able to give himself in serving, in helping people with distress. It is practical, yet it requires a certain degree of willingness to offer more on our part as helper. It is not a mere process that must be done, a procedure that must be followed step by step. It is an encounter with people, a troubled person, and a person who is willing to help meets, and there comes healing. There are three basic procedures that must be followed in psychological first aid. Basic things that we must do as we try to look at the context of other people's experiences. First is to look, to assess what is happening around us. During these crisis situations, it is possible that there will be a surge of people who will be requiring of our help, will be needing our help. And we could not attend to them right there and then. We could not help them altogether. We must be able to identify who among these people has the immediate need for help. Who among them can be helped in another time? So there must be a level of priority on who must comes first in our intervention. Second, we must also look at the needs of the person, to look at the condition of that person. We must be sensitive enough to see and to recognize, is this person still healthy? Is still be able to eat, to practice good hygiene, proper hygiene? Is this person still able to function well in his work or in class? Is he still able to relate properly and effectively with the people around him? Is his way of thinking still well? and normal. All of these things will give us a hint. What must be the reason behind these experiences of that person? And it would help us to see what might be the main problem of that person and how we could address them in the way we can respond to their needs. Second thing we must do is to listen. And it is the bulk, the most extensive part of psychological first aid, listening. The bulk of effort lies here on the second procedure of listening. After you observe the person, you must listen. Listen more than talk. Give time. Give the person a time to share his or her own experiences, to share his or her story in the most easy, in the easiest, in the most comfortable way that he could. Be patient. Let him or her speak and tell his or her experiences, what he or she is going through. How does this problem seen by that person in his or her own perspectives? How does these experiences affect him or her? Do not force him or her to speak of some things that he or she is not yet capable of sharing. Let him or her to tell his or her own story in his or her own pacing. Again, psychological first aid is much more about listening. Listening and allowing the person, the troubled person, to share his experiences, to practice catharsis, the venting or the releasing of the tension through a healthy discourse and sharing of stories. And finally, the last part of the psychological first aid is linking. This is now the time to do something. If the person needs help in something and you think that you could be of help in that matter, then do it. If that person lacks source of food, then if you have the means to offer that person food items, then do so. If that person is in danger because of the possibility of happening another dangerous event or tragedy, then try to seek for help to save that person. Or if this person is concerned, requires help from particular agencies or particular persons, then you could help that person to reach that agency for help. Again, linking is about extending what we could give to them at that present time. Extending our help so that the burden may be lessened and the person who is distressed at that particular time may be saved from further distress and accident or danger. And another thing, another part of linking, if you see that the person whom you are dealing with is really distressed and you are not able to help that person, and you think that another person must intervene, then carefully or courteously ask that person, are you willing to ask or to be helped by a professional, a mental health professional who could be of help to you in settling these issues? Again, we must give only what we could give. Do not promise anything that you cannot offer, something that you cannot fulfill. At the end of the day, our duty as psychological first aiders is to give help and support, to give immediate support during this crisis situation. It is not you who must settle everything, every problems that that person will be encountering, it is still their duty to address those situations with just your help, with your guidance and support. While we're doing these primary actions in psychological first aid, we must be mindful of doing these three. We should be mindful of practicing these six primary uh, reminders, things that we must be aware of as we practice this psychosocial intervention. Number one, we must be honest and trustworthy at all times. We must strive to be honest and trustworthy to these people. And we must be sensitive enough to see that they have really exerted effort to seek your help, because not all would really ask help because they are all afraid of being negatively judged and regarded as weak and inferior. So we must repay that trust by being trustworthy. Second, we must respect them as a person by giving them the ability to decide on themselves. We must empower them because at the end of the day, we are just there to assist them on accepting what are the things happening in their lives and in weighing what are the possible solutions that they could consider to address their problems and challenges. Third is to set aside our opinions, our biases, our preconceptions. What matters here is their opinion, their way of looking and judging at the situation. If the person's way of thinking on the situation is really impaired, then we could just explain it gradually without forcing that person to believe whatever we are saying. We just encourage them to look in another perspective, in another lens, in which they would be more critical in analyzing what does this situation really be to me in my life. How is it affecting me really today? And if that will be the case, then that person will be the first person who will be able to see what is wrong with him, what must be changed, and what must be done. Fourth, we must practice confidentiality. The sharing of other people should not be shared with other people. Whatever you hear or see, keep it to yourself, because it is a part of protecting that person from the judgments of other people. However, confidentiality has a limit. If that person will cause danger to oneself or to the people around him or her, then you must do something. You must contact the authorities, you must contact the parents or the family members of that person, then notify them that something might happen because of a particular case. However, you should not divulge all of the details that you know. Just tell whatever is required by the situation. Fifth, we must behave appropriately. We must take into consideration the personal background of the person. So we must be mindful of what we say and what we do. Because if we will not be sensitive enough to look at these things, we might send wrong cues to that person of instead of becoming of building rapport with that person, of being comfortable enough to share his or her experiences, then that person might feel fear or may become more reserved because you are not really there for that person. you cannot be really be of help of that person because you are not really interested of helping that person. And finally, the most important of everything is self-care. Again, the helper is much important than the help that he could do. Because if the helper is not safe, is not in good condition, then that person, instead of helping others, can just pose danger and might just make things complicated. So if you're not disposed to do psychological first aid, then courteously excuse yourself. Do not pretend that you are okay, because you who are not okay, if you will try to do things, you might be the danger, the cause of danger to other people. Again, remember to take care of yourself, and if needed, practice team care. Take care of one another. Helpers must help each one another. Let me end by sharing this takeaway from one of my experiences in psychological first aid. It reads, happiness is a choice. We can always choose to be okay and do our best practices and effective coping strategies. This is how we must understand self-love. You must choose to be happy because you deserve to be happy. After seeing and hearing a lot of experiences from other people who are troubled and feel pain during this time of the pandemic, this work is really gratifying and empowering. Not because of the appreciation of other people, but because you would feel and you would see that something is happening, something good happens to those people. That despite the limitations of help, the amount of help, the degree of help that you could offer, still something worked out. Because not about us, but because they have learned through us to love themselves. And when we love ourselves, we would do everything that is required of us to help ourselves and to be better individuals, to be much happier day by day, because it is something that we deserve. We must remember, psychological first aid is more than just a form of psychosocial support. It is a form of conversation, of listening to a person, listening with the heart. And more than anything else, psychological first aid is our form, is an expression of love. Thank you for being one with me in this discussion, and I hope you learned something. Thank you very much. Keep safe and be safe all the time.